Welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show with my beautiful co-host, back by popular demand. The
How many
one.
times are you going to say that?
I'm going to keep saying it all season because that's exactly what it is. Back by popular demand. My inbox has been blowing up with people asking, where's Yolanda at? I've covered for you long enough. Let's call it what it is. Welcome back, Yolanda M. Smith, the Branthopist.
Thank you, Andre. How are you?
I'm always good.
You're looking good. You're looking good. You know, them are some nice glasses you got on.
There's a story behind these glasses. Shaquille O'Neal had them on a couple of his pictures, but I know I was the first to get these. They're a monster creation, and the style came from the movie Iron Man 2 with Mickey Rourke.
Wow.
And I was trying to find those identical glasses, and one of my friends in Australia, I shared with her the story. I had been trying to find those glasses, and she says, Andre, you can't get them because they was a one of a kind.
Oh my goodness.
And she said, check your mail. I got a surprise for you. These glasses were made by the company Monster, and they was made specially for me. And they made not only this pair, but they also made a pair of sunglasses.
Nice.
Thank you.
They're sharp. I like them.
You can't get these, though.
You look intelligent.
Thank you.
I wonder what I would look like in them.
I'm sorry, you can't get
He
these.
won't even let me try them on. Anyway, man, we're excited for today's show.
Yeah. And I'm going to tell you the reason why I like today's show is we see the social media being flooded with mature women. And when I say
like that word,
yeah.
Thank you. That was a nice word.
When I say mature women
in that category.
When I say mature women, let's talk about mature women of a particular age bracket. You know,
probably over 50.
Over 50, the 50s and over. It's that I call that wine.
Fine wine.
Fine wine. You know, I take it any way I can get it. When you're 50, you don't been through the experience. When you're 60, it's time to open the cork.
Oh.
Damn, did I say that?
Ooh, I like it.
Okay.
Because that means it's aged just to perfection.
Okay. But what would happen if there was a setback in your health that kind of handicapped that journey and you have to redo it all over again? What do you think that must be like?
I don't know. I can't imagine it because I haven't been there, but just off the cuff, I imagine it would take a lot of resilience. Mm-hmm. And some determination, commitment, and some discipline. You think? Maybe some of those things, but I don't know. But I bet you we can find out.
We can find out.
Yes.
Today's guest has definitely went down that road of not, I won't say reinventing, because she's already in the medical field. She's already has a exercise background, but to be hit with an illness and then have to start all over at a tender age of maybe 40 to 50 and redoing it all over again has to be a challenge. But she's here to tell her story today. I'd like to welcome to the show, I'm gonna see if I can get this name right, Sarah Lisinski.
Lisinski, yes.
Did we get it right?
Perfect.
Welcome to the show, Sarah.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I followed a little bit of your journey on social media. I appreciate you coming here to share such an impactful story. Before we get started, tell the viewers a little bit about you.
Okay, great. I'm happy to do that. So I am, I'll be 61 soon, and I've been a nurse for over, 32 years at this point, and super busy ways. Had a side gig, if you will, of teaching exercise classes. I did it for about 15 years, and then when I stopped teaching, I just got to the point of where I felt that I was in this middle-aged doldrum, and probably had gone about 60 pounds heavier at one point than I am right now, and just really wasn't feeling well, and just was kind of ready to say, okay, this is where life brings you, at the time I was in my late 40s. And then finding out, going to, different providers, and then finding out that I was diagnosed with a pituitary tumor. So it was a prolactinoma. And so it was treated. It was where it was located could not be surgically treated, so I was medically treated, and the treatment took a couple of years actually. And so I went through that treatment, and when the tumor was shrunk down to, I mean, it's still there, but it's tiny at this point. And so then here I was, and I was like, okay, well, here I am, and here I'm kind of chubby. I haven't been working out. I haven't been doing a whole lot. And I just happened to see someone that I knew and who had lost a lot of weight. And I contacted her and said, hey, well, you know what, if you could do this, and she was a couple years older than I was, I'm like, well, I can do this too. And just really got on a food program, and then really started doing all those things that we all read about, watching what we ate. But then I took all of what I had done for working out, and I kind of put it together into a 15-minute workout. And so I've coached people along the way of how to do this, 15-minute workout, and with a paradigm shift of that, working out for me is more like brushing my teeth. I wouldn't leave the house without doing that. And so I just do it every day. And it's just, it's everything that they say, you just have to be committed, you have to be consistent and do it. And so here I am, almost 61. I'm probably leaner than I've been my whole entire life. I'm super active. I have, I work full time. I have 2 horses. Actually, I've ridden for, most of my life. So I do that. We have a Bernese Mountain Dog too, as well. And so we do some things with the dogs. My son lives in Poland, but, so he was just here recently, and then when he's here, we're shooting guns and doing things. This is Texas, and so just trying to really stay busy, and and knowing that life doesn't end once you hit those 40, 50, or 60s. You keep on going.
Sir, let me ask a question. You're in the medical field. This unfortunate incident happened around your the 40 mark. What were some of the symptoms that you was having? And being a nurse, did you realize the magnitude that was happening to your body?
Yeah. I knew, I'm very in tune with my body. And I think that's one key thing that people need to do is really listen to your body. I just didn't feel right. And I just felt, I was lethargic. I just felt very bloated. No matter what I did to try and lose a couple pounds, I couldn't do it. And, it was just kind of one of those things that you really need to listen. And then I had to be persistent, because actually the first MRI I had, the radiologist read it. They were like, oh, there's nothing, there's no tumor there. And when I went to a specialist who was who worked in neurosurgery, endocrinologist, as soon as I walked in, he's like, oh no, it's not where you think it's supposed to be, it's somewhere else. So also going to somebody who really specializes in something is really super important as well.
What were some of the symptoms? You mentioned weight, but what were some of the other things that this tumor was causing that you probably was aware of or wasn't aware of? Because we know you said the weight loss, but I would assume with a tumor of that magnitude, yeah, but I'm pretty sure there had to be other things, because this is something that's growing inside of her. I mean, were there other complications before that?
I think before, and in addition to that, explain, because if the viewers don't understand what the pituitary gland does, I think that'd be helpful too. Yeah.
Yeah. Your pituitary gland actually is like the mothership of all your hormones. So it regulates most of your hormones in your body by, sending out other hormones and things, so that the other parts of your body know what to do, what to secrete and whatnot. So with this, prolactin actually is what is secreted when women breastfeed. And so then what happens is, so after you have a baby and whatnot, your prolactin level will be really, really high. So men get these as well. And some people, their prolactin levels can be up in the thousands, where mine was only up in the hundreds. So I think, again, it was just that I just didn't feel like myself. I felt super lethargic. I couldn't lose any weight. And I just, I knew that there wasn't something right. And, so it was just one of those being persistent of going, because the other unfortunate thing for women if I'm going to generalize, is that I do think that women get poo-pooed a lot, because men, if you go to men providers, and this is what have happened to me in the past, it's kind of like, well, this is kind of what happens when you go through menopause. This is how you feel. And I don't necessarily feel that women have to just go, oh, throw your hands up and go, okay, that's the rest of my life.
You was dealing with hormonal changes with the pituitary. So did your estrogen levels go up as well? And did you even suffer what we might call a postpartum menopausal thing that you was talking about? Did this occur earlier than was expected because of the pituitary being compromised?
Well, again, I've actually been pretty lucky in my life that I've had good providers available to me. And so I will say that I'm probably one of the few women that will say that I've never had a hot flash, because I have done a hormone replacement throughout. I started probably in my 40s, and and like I said, my endocrinologist could argue with me and say, oh, well, this could be related, but if you look at the studies and whatnot, it is not. Hormone replacement is not related to the pituitary tumor. So yes, I think that women tend to get put in that bucket, like, oh, it's menopause or it's perimenopause, and that it's, this is how you're going to feel. And I think just finding that right person to say, we don't have to feel this way. So whether it is something like prolactin, or even pituitary tumor, or if it's just going through menopause, we don't have to necessarily just take it lying down. There's things that you can do.
That's amazing that you say that, because I have addressed a couple things in my own health, and the answer is, oh, you're just aging. You're just getting older. You're just, I mean, just on several fronts, I hear that a lot. Oh, that just happens. I'm like, what do you mean it just happens? It's amazing. And I know there's an aging process, but for that to be the reason, as if then it's no big deal, just deal with it, right? So I like hearing you say that you were an advocate for yourself, and because you were, thank God, you discovered something that could otherwise have been detrimental, right?
Correct.
Yeah, amazing.
Where my tumor was, it was close to my carotid artery. And so even though the endocrinologist that I went to, and he's like, well, they're usually soft tumors and they go around, but the carotid artery is what feeds your brain. And I'm like, yeah, I don't really like that idea. I think I'll just take the medicine for a little bit. And I'm not, and being a nurse, I am not a medicine advocate. And I'll actually let you guys know something else. Again, this was one challenge, but about a year and a half ago, I had gotten COVID, and I'm one of the lucky people who now has long COVID. So here I am, a cardiac nurse for the majority of my life. And now I've had, from having COVID, I have lots of arrhythmias now. And so I have been, thankfully, I work with a great electrophysiologist, and, we're trying to find medications for me. But, again, I have to advocate for myself, because I don't, some of these medicines make me feel horrible. And I'm like, I'm not going to live like that for the rest of my life. So, I've already gone in to have an ablation done, which is where they go in and they try to either burn or freeze where that little node is. And that didn't work. So, so again, it's just one of those other challenges of, trying to find the right thing, but also being, the person to speak up for yourself and go, what, I'm not going to feel like crap for the rest of my life. We need to find something else. So, just yet one more challenge, and, you just can't just lie down and let it take you over.
Sarah, when did you decide to do hormone replacement? Were there indications that led you to say, I need to go here? Because a lot of times when you're dealing with an endocrinologist, those factors only come up with hormone replacement. I'm a personal trainer, and I studied endocrinology as well.
So about some hormone replacement.
So when you're talking about hormone replacement, a lot of times women don't even entertain that field unless there's weight issues where they want to either develop more muscle mass, or there's a problem with the estrogen fluctuation in their body. You were, well, you are physically fit, and I'm pretty sure you was physically fit at that time. Why was there a need for you to start hormone replacement
in your 40s? Yeah,
prior
in
to
your
even
40s.
having the pituitary?
Yeah. Well, I worked part-time for a plastic surgeon when I lived in Scottsdale, and he was, he did a lot of what you call anti-aging, and so it was just a big advocate of, getting ahead of things before like why go through the torture of menopause, of hot sweats, not being able, or hot flashes, and not being able to sleep, and all of those things when there were there's ways to manage it, and so, but you have to be thoughtful about what direction you want to go with hormone replacement as well, because there's big women's studies out there, and people say, oh, higher chance of cancer if you do this or do that,
Or heart
so
attack
it depends
too,
on which
right?
yes, and which estrogen replacement that you want to do. So the the estrogen that was from that was created from pregnant horses' urine, if you will, that you actually take by mouth, versus which gives you a higher chance of having things like clotting issues and things like that, which increases some of those issues. But whereas like I do, at one point I was doing creams, but I didn't find those super effective for me. So I do pellets that they put underneath of your skin. And now as I've gotten older, I do take progesterone as well at night, but that's a pill itself. So I go in every 3 or 4 months for pellets. And the funny thing is that you just go in when you start to feel that you don't have that level anymore.
Yeah.
So it's estrogen, testosterone, and then taking a little bit of progesterone as well. But then they also, where I go now, the provider that I go to, they check your levels every, it's pretty much every 6 months, just to see where you are and make sure that we're spot on, and we have been. So it's been good.
What made your doctors, when you was diagnosed with the pituitary problem, evidently you had already been starting the treatment of the hormone therapy treatment. Did they even think at that time, before it began to escalate, to do in-depth? Did they even conduct an in-depth story between the hormone replacement and maybe, I'm gonna just say it like this, maybe the connection with the pituitary? Or they just ruled it out without?
I will say that, yeah. Now, there are some tumors that have been, I want to say linked to some hormone replacement, that are actually like these fluid-filled brain tumors, and I can't remember the exact name of them at this point. But this was not there. There's no links to a prolactinoma and hormone replacement. So even though, like I said, my one provider was not super supportive of this. Like I said, he was a 48-year-old man, and I was like, well, you know what, that's great, but we'll just take care of this with you, and I am going to still continue down the path that I feel that I need, and and I do my own research with things. Right. There are plenty of medical articles out there, as well as and real articles. I'm not saying something that somebody wrote on the internet. The studies and all that you can see on PubMed, etc. Yeah. So, I did my research and felt this is what I feel comfortable with, but then also knowing that no matter what it is that you take, there's risks to that. But then again, there's also risks of not doing anything. Again, like Yolanda had said about, increase for heart attacks, etc., as women get older and their levels go down. So by the time we go through menopause, then we're at the same risk as men.
Okay, so for the viewers listening, because this is good. I think this is taking a different turn than I thought it was going to take, but I think this is super educational. The thing that I have is that, how did they know to MRI the pituitary gland, or did you get a full body scan? How did they hone in on that?
Mhm. It was, I went to, again, it's one of those things. This was actually a naturopath that I was going to. And when I was talking to him about my symptoms, that was one of the things that he thought about. He goes, I think you might have a pituitary tumor. And at first I said, no, I don't have a pituitary tumor. That's crazy. And then when the symptoms kept going on, I said to him, okay, I agree. And he says, well, let's get you set up for an MRI. And like I said, when I went for the first MRI, or actually I went for one MRI, but when the radiologist read it, he was like, oh, there's no pituitary tumor. And I was like, there is just something not right. So then at that point, I went to, the hospital that I worked with was a children's hospital, but our sister facility for adults, we had my scans sent there, and that's where the endocrinologist was like, oh, yes, you do. It's right here. So,
Wow.
How was when you find out that you've been diagnosed with this? Two-part question. How long did it take from the moment that you start having the symptoms to the system being recognized? How long did that take? And then more importantly, once you find out that you have this, what was your emotional mindset now? Because you got confirmation that there is a problem here. So the two-part question is, how long did it take from the time that you got it? And then what was the emotional state now? Because now you have to go through a process of treatment and recovery.
Yeah. I believe from the start of my symptoms, it was probably, over a year, but then trying to recognize it, because the weight gain and things like that happened over several years. But I think that finally, like a year before, I was like, God, I just don't feel good. And that's where I was kind of like, oh, I guess this is what happens, and this is what you have to live with. And then once we finally did get the diagnosis, thankfully I knew, part because of what I do for a living, but also I knew that it was a benign tumor, and that, I mean, you could live with it without being treated. You could, but some. Well, I should go back on that. Some pituitary tumors, people will have issues with vision and things like that, depending upon where the tumor is. That I did not have, especially because where mine was located. So I just wanted to make sure that, like, okay, I first, you are like, well, gosh, I don't want to die from this, and then I was like, okay, this is benign. We're going to be okay. But, what do I need to do to manage it as well as I can? And then the other worry is, okay, there's always risk to medications, and, do I want to take this? But, looking at not having a surgical option and then taking this medication that actually, it's called cabergoline, and it's actually used for people with Parkinson's. And there are, fairly severe side effects with it. And one of the things that could harm one of your heart valves, if you will. But people that take it for Parkinson's take it 5 times a day, and where I took my medication only once a week. So that's how powerful it was. And then literally my levels went down within the first month of taking it. So I just took it once a month, and then we just monitored my levels, and then I had other repeat MRIs, and then literally it was, very small on my follow-up MRI, and then my prolactin started going up a little bit again, and so we retreated one more time, and since then, now I just, when I have blood drawn once or twice a year, or once a year, I should say, I have a prolactin level drawn, and I'm kind of manage it at that point, going, okay, if it's low, then I'm good.
What? Let's go back a minute. We know we've been diagnosed with this, but the question is, what did the doctor say that caused it to begin with?
It's one of those things
was there a lack of something, stress, food? You already exercised, so I mean, where did they think it even occurred?
just one of those lucky things that you get, one of the short straws that you pull,
Hear you.
who
Everything's
knows?
unknown. Don't you know that cause unknown, cause unknown? We got a lot of diseases and a whole lot of unknowns. I know that for a fact. So just for reference, I worked in the pharmaceutical industry for over 30 years.
You know this drug that she's taking?
I do not know that
Okay.
one. But the funny thing is that most diseases or most conditions and things like that, there's a lot of unknowns to them. A few things they can pinpoint, right?
Yeah.
You can pinpoint, but there's a lot of unknowns. Autoimmune diseases, that's one of the big ones. Everything's unknown, right? Unknown. But what about this? Let's switch gears a little bit, because you got through that and then all of a sudden you made a mind shift too, and said, it's time to get fit. What am I going to do here? Because I remember you said earlier, I thought this is where I'm supposed to be at middle age, gaining the weight and that sort of thing. But I'm looking at you now. You're looking fabulous. So you've clearly done something.
Yeah.
So share with us what it is that you've done and what that shift was.
Yeah. It was, one, I think being motivated by someone, seeing someone who's in your age range and whatnot, and then seeing that they have done it and you go, well, gosh, if they can do it, why can't I do it? And, just making that commitment and then circling back and I think there was a couple aha moments, for me, is that when you go back and when you're on a very prescribed food plan of what you're doing, then you get to the point where you're like, this is what a serving size is. Because you forget, and I will tell you, my husband and I had gotten into some horrible habits. Like I said, my son was in school in Poland and he lives there now. And so like the two of us would go like, hey, let's go get a key lime pie. And literally we would sit down and eat half a pie a piece. You know what I mean? Like, so we had clearly like all of the good habits that we had, years before were, down the crapper, so we too, so I understand when people say, oh, there's things that, that I love, or even, something such as Thanksgiving coming up next week. And, and then that mindset of, it should be about the people and, and yeah, there might be things that, your aunt makes once a year, but you don't have to eat all of it. You can have a little bit of it and enjoy it and share, but it should be a bit more about the people and the experience as much as you can. And, I really try and live that now, because it's just too hard or it's too easy to slide back. And so you just have to be, I hate to say, and that's where when I coach people and I'm like, there is no, magic carpet ride here. I mean, you really have to, you have to do your due diligence. Then you have to really just be consistent and know what to do. And then you just have to do it. And you have to do it the majority of the time. Like you don't have to be over the top, and, you don't have to go and do these like crazy, workout that's, 4 hours at a time. I mean, you just need to be consistent. You have to eat well the majority of the time. And then in our food industry here, that's a whole nother story. You have to be thoughtful about what it is that you're putting in your body too.
Sarah, what was the reaction when your husband found out, when you shared this information with your husband and your family, what you was going through? What was that like in the household for you?
Yeah. I know, my husband's not medical. And so, he, gets worried. And so, so I tend to be all the driver for anything medical in our family. And so, he just, had to listen to me and just, take from what I was giving him. And I was like, okay, this is what I have to do. And, and just like, circling back to, this long COVID now, this is stuff that, that we're doing. And I'm like, okay, this might not be great, but this is what I have to do. And, and he's supportive. I know he worries, but, just have to kind of put one foot in front of the other. And, because you can't just lay down and go, oh, well, this is it. I give up, because I'm not going to give up.
How has your life, how much alteration have you had to do with your life now, being in the medical field, being stricken with long-term COVID, getting over the pituitary, trying to exercise, beautiful age of 61 years old, family? I mean, how much how much of a struggle has it been for you to put all these pieces together and to rejuvenate to where you're at right now?
Well, I just live every day, just, everything in front of me. My boss is really funny. She's like, "Oh, I just always look 2 days ahead." And I'm pretty much at this point where I just, I live what I need to do. And, I've always been, super, super active. I was kind of like the Energizer bunny when I was younger. I would just go, 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 go. And so now the thing that I just have to, work in is that I refuse to not do the things that I want to do. But you know what? I mean, like, I might come home from the barn on a Saturday morning after I rode my horse and cleaned up paddocks and clean tack and did all these crazy things. And I've worked out already in the morning and I've been up since 3:30 in the morning and, all those things. I might come home and take a nap. And, or my husband laughs like, "Oh, we'll be watching TV together." He's like, "Okay, you'll be asleep in, 30 minutes. So I just, I think I'm a little more tired than I used to be, but I don't want to give up any of those aspects of my life that I really enjoy.
Hey, I think that's normal. Let's just be clear. I'm right there with you, sister. And sometimes you just feel like it. Sometimes you don't. And when you don't, you just don't do it. I'm curious about the 15-minute workout. That's where I'm stuck. I'm like, what are you doing for 15 minutes? I mean, that's kind of interesting because you're like, you don't have to exercise, and they go, you need to do this treadmill for 30 minutes. Then you need to lift the weights.
Are you trying to pick on me? I used to be her trainer, so I think she's trying to send a subliminal message.
I promise. I just want to know the 15-minute method.
Yeah.
Of course.
Well, the one thing that I think is so true is that, and you hear this all throughout your life, like that the more muscle that you build, the higher your metabolic rate is. And that is the honest to God's truth. And what I have found now, again, I taught years and I was the cardio queen and I have trained for marathons and have done it all. But what I have found is that having more muscle mass has kept me in a better, in better shape than doing, all the cardio and then working out, and then just doing some weights. So in my 15 minutes, I mean, literally, I do it at home in my PJs before I get ready for work. And I break it up, one day are shoulders, one day are bis and tris, the next day are back, chest, and abs. And I can throw in legs here and there. I'm just lucky enough that I have really muscular legs anyway. And my cardio is what I get from when I ride. So I don't sit on my spin bike anymore. That's pretty much what I do. And, but the key to what I do, and I also do 24 push-ups a day. And, but the key to what I do is that, many women are afraid of heavier weights because they're like, "Oh, I'm going to get too bulky and whatnot." But I have women stop me all the time, go, "Oh, how do I get arms like you? How do I get arms like you?" I'm like, okay, it's not something that happens overnight, but you have to challenge yourself with the weights. So if you feel, and every set that I do is a set of 24. So whether I break it down into 8 at a time or 12 at a time, or if you get to the point where you can do 24, then you need to up the weights. So for somebody, and I'm like 123 pounds, and I work with 25s, 30s, 40-pound barbell, and I have two different exercises that I use 20s for. So I use fairly heavy weight for somebody that's my size. And so that's where I challenge people, like, yeah, and you're not going to start that tomorrow and do those kind of weights. But, when I restarted back, I was using 8-pound weights. Mm-hmm. So, and I could barely get to 24. And again, too, and I always put in the push-ups, because when you go away, you always have your body that you can work out with. I'm like, okay, so if I'm at a hotel and I have no place to work out, I can always get on the floor and do abs and do push-ups, because then you get a little bit of a workout in.
Before we wrap up, let me say thank you for taking the time to come on the show and share such a beautiful story of perseverance and recovery.
I feel smart.
Yeah.
I think I learned something.
You're going to go ride your horse. You're going to go to Nashville, ride your horse.
She's in Texas. Oh, me, the horse.
I'm about you. You're going to go and ride your horse, and you're going to say, "Dre, I'm going to work out," and you'll do it she's good at working out. But my question is, before we wrap up.
For a minute.
from
consistency. I got to work on it.
From a woman's standpoint, because we got a lot of women that are going to be listening to this episode. You are in the medical field. You're a nurse. What are some of the key things that you feel women should do to take accountability of their own health? Because I'm a firm believer, doctors only know what you tell them. They can only treat. If you need to be aware at least of your symptoms and what those symptoms consist of, because the more information that you provide your healthcare provider, the better off you're going to be. I'm personally, as a man, I have an endocrinologist that I go to every year, and I get my blood work done. I want to make sure that my estrogen levels are and testosterone levels are where they need to be, so I don't wind up with gynecomastia or male erectile dysfunctions and all this other kind of stuff. With that said, what do you recommend as a nurse for women as a standard protocol as they go talk with their physicians?
Well, the first thing is I think that everybody has to be accountable to the fact that the information that is out there about how they eat, and there's tons of information on the internet that, it's not okay to smoke. Like, you can't do that. If you drink a lot, you really have to question about how much alcohol that you intake. But then also, if you eat too much in volume, as well as your choices if you think it's probably bad and you're eating, fast food and whatnot, you really need to cut that out the majority of the time. But I think the key thing is that your body better than any provider, that you're going to tell them something in 10 minutes because that's your 10-minute slot that you get with them, that you really need to push back if there's things that you don't feel like you're getting the answers to. And just because they say that it is that, do your due diligence, find out about it. And I'm not saying that, make sure that you trust the person that you go to as well. But if you don't feel like you're, get it going in the right direction, then you really need to either find somebody else or really tell them that, you don't need to suffer in silence, but you need to be directed. And I'm not saying just go and change your medicines or do things like that. You need to use them, but you need to have it needs to be a collaboration. It's not the doctor driving, it's not you driving. It needs to be a collaboration.
That's a good question. What would you leave? Okay, so I just want you to impart something positive.
Look, you're smiling like all outdoors now.
Why?
You want to keep talking. You got more questions to ask. I can tell.
No, I just want to know, just if you could give, we always talk about beast mode and overcoming. If there would be something that you could share with mature women coming of age and things like that, what would that piece of advice be for them?
Yeah, I think that any woman, as you are starting to get into that 40s, 50s, 60s, that if you want to still be living, if you will, once you hit your, 60s, 70s, 80s or whatever, you really need to think about it back then. It's hard it gets harder to overcome challenges as you get older and you start to have all of these comorbidities and things. So I think it's, start as young as you can and just keep, but you got to be persistent and you have to be consistent. That's the key to all of it. And you have to be, in charge of things like your food the majority of the time. I'm not saying 100% of the time that you have to, be, perfect, because none of us are perfect. But I think it's just being really consistent.
Man, thank you so much for taking the time to come and share such vital information. We learned a lot today.
I think we did. I'm feeling like now I need to go lift weights. Forget all that trying to get on the bike and run stuff. I just need to start lifting.
I think you're just trying to find a way to get on your horse in Nashville. That's what I think.
The horse is not even around anymore. That's been a while.
I want to, before we wrap up, I want to make sure that the women, this is for the women and the men, that go get checked out, because you never know what your health is and what conditions or things that you may have that are lying dormant in your body.
Yeah.
At least go get a checkup.
Your annual checkups are so important. Your mammograms, get those prostates checked, fellas, and just pay attention to your body.
Yeah.
Pay attention. It's telling you, it's leaving clues for you that something's not right.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another exciting
episode
of
The Andre the Beast
Crayton.
show.